Hey, this is Dr. B, AP Chemistry Memorization, Part 3 of 4. Here are some common parts of laboratory equipment. Be warned that this probably is more than you would need to know, but I think it's convenient to know a lot of these. And this is some of the qualitative aspects of AP Chemistry that students find so vexing. So why not? Let's know a lot of these pieces of lab glassware. I will occasionally go in the wrong direction, but mostly I know in what order these go in. That looks like a Bunsen burner. This is typically known as a clay triangle. What is that? I believe they call that an evaporating dish. These? That's right, test tubes. Yes, this is a beaker. That's a bottle. How about this? Ring stand. That? It's a clamp. This? It's a ring clamp. How about this? Used by witches. It's a mortar and pestle. There's a very old piece of chemistry gear, a crucible along with its cover. These are extremely common, Erlenmeyer Flasks. I believe it's going to go to here next. That is known as a wire gauze. You can put a flame right underneath it. Goggles. Cork. Crystallizing dish. Or also known, and perhaps better known, as a watch glass. There's your Erlenmeyer. Okay, over here, that's a pipette. Clamp, is it? Tongs, I'm sorry, is a freebie. They don't use them anymore, but that happens to be a triple beam balance. Almost all labs now have simple electronic balances, which you can get on Amazon for as little as $10 now if you don't need too much precision. Another Bunsen burner. But we were going here. This is a test tube holder. Not that. That's a test tube rack. That's a test tube holder. Another Bunsen burner. Fine. If we're going here, and we might, that looks like a thermometer. These are very common. These are graduated cylinders. We'll catch it on the next round. That is simply a wash bottle. These are very common. They're almost always disposable pipettes. But we were going here to the little droppers. These aren't typically disposable. They go right into a bottle, and they have a dropper. In this part's glass, usually. If we're going here, that is a pair of forceps. I believe we might be going here. Let's see. That's pretty common. These are usually for titrations. They're called burettes. Here's our graduated cylinder. Here's our micropipettes, usually disposable. This thing doesn't seem like it belongs here, but it's kind of handy. It's just for scraping. What the heck? It's a triangle for file. Sorry, it's a triangular file, and it does put a little cut into glass, and old school chemists use it to cut their glassware without it breaking into a bunch of pieces. Okay, down here is our test tube rack. That's a funnel, and I believe we're now going here. This is usually just called spot plates, but they call them 24 well plates. In research, they might be up to 96 well plates. This is not a spatula, it is a scoopula. Over to the other side. And a lot of repetition here. Another Erlenmeyer. Erlenmeyer Flask. Oh, I'm sorry. We're going up here, I believe, now for distillation. At the top, we have a thermometer. Here, you need to cool off your boiling gas, so it has to condense via a condenser. This is for water in and water out, and let's avoid the most common mistake students have. They try putting water in there and find out that it doesn't work because the water just goes along the bottom. If you put the water in at the low side, it forces it to fill up the entire condenser, thus cooling that gas. Some form of heat. This one's called a heating mantle, and a receiving flask, and you're good to go. Erlenmeyer. Round bottom that happens to have a side arm. It's two-neck, is it not? Another round bottom flask. This, you could call it an Erlenmeyer with a side arm, but that makes it a vacuum flask. So what happens is you'll attach a funnel airtight here, and apply a form of vacuum, either simple water aspiration or mechanical, and your filtration will take place in seconds. So that's a filter flask, is what they called it. You could call it a vacuum flask. Filter flask. This is a funnel. This is a beaker. This is another funnel. Now, since the bottom's a little wider, it's handy for powders or, solids, so it's usually called a powder funnel. This is super handy. If you have oil and water, you just let it drain down and use this stopcock in order to effect separation. They call this a separatory funnel. If you're using vacuum and it's just a tiny amount, this thing can attach nicely here. And since it's small, it goes by the name Hirsch funnel. The bigger ones are also very common. They have the historical name of a Buchner funnel. This looks like a condenser. Now, if it's mounted vertically, it becomes a handy device for just letting something boil almost forever, especially if you make the hole here very small. That means that you can call this a reflux condenser. Let's see if they do. A West condenser, fine. It serves two purposes. You can either mount it right here for a regular distillation condenser, or you mount it vertically, and that's when you can reflux. And I hope you get the idea. That way you can let something boil without losing the gas, because it'll simply condense back in. Never seal this top here, by the way, because then you would get a pressurized system, and it will relieve itself either violently or otherwise. If you have a container filled with some sort of packing, air can still get through, but this would make for effective distillation. I'd call this a distillation column for sure, and it would go right there. Right now this is simple distillation, but if you stick that thing there, it becomes fractional distillation. It should not have water in and water out because you don't want to cool this thing, you want to heat it. The best way is to vacuum jacket it. But if you can't do that, at least wrap something around it and insulate it. So I would call that a distilling column. This is obscure, but why not? Occasionally you want to have choice of two things here. Perhaps that's a reflux condenser there, but you want to be able to drip something in. For that, you use a Claisen adapter. This part right here is the part right there. So this is usually called a distillation adapter. And if you want to do the entire distillation under vacuum, you replace that part there with this that makes it all airtight. That goes to your vacuum source. Notice that it's not right where the drips would be. It has a jacket around it, so they call that a vacuum adapter. Usually things aren't airtight when you put on your Erlenmeyer, when you put on your funnel, whether it's Hirsch or Buchner right here, so you use a little adapter there. I would call it a vacuum adapter. They call it a filter adapter. Fine. Another clamp, and we are good. Here is quite a bit of chemistry lab equipment.